and welcome to Smart Money. I'm Alishia Seckam, and joining me today is Jeanette Marais. She's CEO of Momentum Metropolitan Group, who said before that she grew up on a farm in the Free State, having been born into a family of farmers with no real role models in the financial services space, but that she managed to carve a career out in this field nevertheless. Jeanette, what a pleasure it is chatting to you this morning. And I've got to ask you right at the top, with that kind of background, when was it that you decided that you wanted a career in the investment world? Can you pinpoint a moment?
Alishia, I think life happened, and I can't really say that growing up I knew that this is where I was going to be. But there was a moment, and now I'm looking back, I think I can probably pinpoint it a little bit to that. And it was simply that my mom she was a graduate, in the kind of early 60s. I think, for a woman to have gone to university, she was a teacher. I mean, I still joke about it because I'm quite a petrol head, but she actually drove her own little Mini Cooper then. And then she married my dad. And I recall my mom and dad, I mean, you could say arguing about money. But really, when I look back, I think it was her struggle for her own identity. The fact that she was completely financially independent, and then suddenly she was on this farm with her kids and a great husband and all of that, but being completely dependent on my father for, any amount of money that she needed for the household of her kids. And she actually, when I turned 18, she gave me my little book that I wrote in, and I was 5 years old. She taught me to read and write when I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I wrote there, I will never ask a man for money, in like big fat letters, like you do when you're 5 years old. And maybe that's kind of where it started. I mean, I couldn't have foreseen that I would be where I am today. But I think the need for financial independence, the need for my own identity was probably kind of ingrained in me from that very, very early age. And maybe through the years, I fed on that.
Absolutely. I mean, what a fuel behind a career that's obviously saw you start at Momentum from the onset. You then moved on to other financial services companies before being brought back to Momentum in 2018 as part of this fixer duo, if we can call it that. You as Deputy, Hillie Meyer as CEO, to help stabilize the company when it was going through perhaps its roughest patch ever. So never mind investment manager, Jeanette, well-respected executive in the financial sector, right? Had you ever thought yourself a fixer before then?
I was quite the fixer. I think if, people kind of build up a reputation and you build up a bit of I suppose, a set of expertise, and fixing was definitely one of them. At least two of my previous companies that I worked for, my role was to actually turn businesses around. So I think in a way, there's a bravery involved. There's strong leadership that's needed in order to fix something, because fixing doesn't mean that you simply walk in and you kind of, get rid of people and you just break things down. Fixing is much more about getting a team to turn around, getting a team to believe again, getting a team to follow you in terms of some of the ideas that you bring in, because often, they're part of the problem, or they've lost hope because they're so kind of, caught up in the circumstances that they don't see their way out. So I think fixing, can sometimes, almost from a reputational point of view, could be, oh, get her, she's tough, she can come fix it. But I think there's so much more involved in fixing, because if people don't believe in you, if they're not willing to kind of stretch themselves to maybe the kind of stretched targets or the stretched ideas that you bring to the table, you will never be able to fix an organization, because fixing means you need to sustain it after you've made some changes, and then it needs to start to flourish. I mean, the real test of fixing is in whether the business really turns around for years afterwards. So yeah, I'm a bit of a fixer, that's for sure.
Well, looking at the growth we've seen, in the group over the years, you've more than proven your mettle, Jeanette. You've now taken over the CEO seat. You've been in it, just over 6 months now. One assumes the new role or title, not too tough a transition for you, surely, given the role, you already played in the organization and having worked very closely with former CEO Hillie Meyer.
Well, so interestingly, I was brought in exactly 6 years ago now. In a month it would be 6 years since we both returned to the organization. And I was obviously appointed by the board at the time when, they kind of asked myself and Hillie to come back. When Hillie came in, his first thing he said to me was, "Oh, I don't really want a deputy CEO. I like this federated culture we have. I like businesses with its own CEOs and they take end-to-end responsibility. So from this kind of deputy role, there's not really a lot for you to do here. Can you focus on your investments business and your distribution businesses, and can you fix them up for me?" So in a way, I always joked with Hillie and said he only used his deputy to do the things he didn't like doing. I'm many things that he didn't like, he would say, "Oh, by the way, I've got a deputy, let me call her to come and do it." Now I'm saying that jokingly, but in a way, my real test almost was, could I turn the investments business around? Could I turn the distribution businesses around? And yes, of course, am I enough of a team player in the bigger executive team to also help with some of the ideas we had and to kind of follow through on that? And I think, in a team, you play a role. My role was always the one that kept on challenging, that kept on asking the difficult questions. And the team allowed me to do it even when I was deputy. I mean, no one on Exco reported to me. So it was kind of more of a title than a real role at that point in time. But in the last 3 years before he left, his task was to find his replacement. And that was quite a tough process because I was never earmarked for the role. He gave the whole executive committee the opportunity to raise our hands and say whether we'd be interested. I did raise my hand, of course. And then we walked a path to say, you've got to be the right person, that you've got to have a culture match with the organization. The team must want you, because the worst we can have is that the whole team walk out because you're the wrong person. So he's very tough on me in that last year or two. And then, of course, his generosity when I got the role to really set me up was quite amazing.
All of that being said, Jeanette, having been a key contributor to MMH's, strategy and evolution since 2018, has that seen very much a maintaining of the status quo now, or has there been a shift when it comes to what you see as the biggest priority since taking over the CEO role?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. When in the kind of lead up to, all the interviews I had with the board and, it was quite, like I said, quite an intense process. Obviously, I had to think about it because I knew they were going to ask me, so what's going to be different? And I had to find a strong path between preserving what is great and what we've built up over the last 6 years, but at the same time to say new era, new CEO, and also I'm very different to Hillie in many instances, and therefore I have to believe that I'm the right person for now. So
absolutely, and what a critical time, right? Sorry to interrupt, but what a critical time for this transition to happen, because Momentum Metropolitan's Reinvent and Grow strategy comes to an end pretty soon, in 3 to 4 months. So where to from here for the group? Is there now a new plan on the table?
Yeah, so actually, I had the privilege last week to spend a very intense week with every single CEO and their teams presenting their new strategy. We haven't found a name for it yet. We call it Beyond, 2024. So, that it's kind of in the making. We'll obviously have a name for it. But, to kind of return to what's to follow, there are a few things that we've done that I think is part of why we've turned the business around. One of it is this federated structure with CEOs that take end-to-end responsibility for their businesses. But that very kind of strength can turn into a weakness, because it means that instead of collaborating with each other, if you think about it, it's the same set of clients, it's the same set of advisors. There's so many things that we should collaborate on, yet because of this fiercely independent structure and fiercely independent culture, we kind of sometimes end up competing with each other. So there's a new buzzword, which is collaboration, that says preserve what's great, but collaborate, because by collaboration, you could bring scale to your business. You could often do better for your clients because you kind of collaborate. Then there's definitely a new drive for me, and that is around purpose. I'm a heart leader. I'm someone that says I need a reason to jump out of bed in the morning, and I think so does 17,000 people in this business. And
Yeah.
to just be profit driven for me is not enough of a purpose. For me, it's about doing the right thing every single day for your client. And I think that will bring purpose and that will bring profit instead of focusing on profit per se. So there's lots of new kind of, buzzwords and new things that is happening that I'm very, very excited about.
Jeanette, what an exciting future it is, right? Because as a business, you're continuing to invest in growth, albeit in a slow growth economy, riddled with risk. Political risk is a big one this year, given the upcoming elections. So I'm going to run with that earlier analogy we used, right? What would a fixer's advice be to a newly elected government to effectively start turning things around for the country?
I would, this is such a kind of a loaded question or a loaded answer. I think anytime we get asked about politics, we all go, and all my media people go, oh, no, 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 be so careful. But let me just talk from my heart. I think our government we need to fix this country. We need to fix the basics. We need to get our economy to grow. We need to fix our education system. Education for me is probably the one thing that I am most passionate about. And if we don't fix our education system, how on earth? I mean, we have a skill scarcity. Last week, when we were doing all of our presentations around our new strategy, every single business mentioned skill scarcity as one of their greatest risks. We have millions and millions of people in this country. We have millions of people who graduate every year. But because of the fact that the education system isn't fixed, we actually find that oftentimes we employ those people and they're just simply not ready. They don't have the technical knowledge and expertise that we need. I mean, I get all passionate about education, but I do think that it's also incredibly important that the world out there start to find trust in us again, to invest back in our markets. I mean, this morning there's an article that 1 trillion rand has actually flown out of our country, out of our economy, out of our market by the foreign markets in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, we cannot survive on an island if the world does not see a future for us as an economy. And then lastly is to say, acknowledge, take our hand as private sector. We want to work with government to fix and to grow and to do whatever. For us to prosper, we have to take the hand of government. And often we find that when we sit on opposite sides, maybe of a table when there's some negotiations taking place, we are treated like the enemy rather than a friend that says, come, let's work together. Because I think we need to do it together.
Because in the interim, right, people are feeling the pressure, many trying to get their own strategies as far as financial planning goes in order to build necessary buffers so that they're better able to withstand potential risks. If there's one bit of financial advice you'd give the average South African today, Jeanette, what would that be in this context?
I'm going to be naughty and do two because I think they go hand in hand. Actually, and you might laugh when I say it, but I deeply believe in the value of good financial advice. I have 3 advisors because I don't have the time or the expertise. I've spent 30 years in the financial services industry, and yet I don't manage my own pension fund, my own money. I don't make my own decisions around these things. I have an advisor that gives me advice. So I think having an advisor, someone that can help you kind of stay the course, is incredibly important. Secondly, it's just a very simple principle of starting today. I always use the analogy in saying it's like planting a tree. Best time was 20 years ago. Second best time is today. Not like a diet on Monday, today. If you haven't started yet, don't despair. Just start. Just start to invest. Just start to get an advisor. Start to get a plan. And I think the longer you leave it, the bigger the need for a financial advisor to help you maneuver how you're going to make up for lost time.
Yeah. On that note, what has been the best investment decision you've made, Jeanette? And just for some good measure, to show that even financial experts are human, let's stack it up against your worst.
So my worst is actually, it's this house I'm sitting in right now. And it's the fact that at the time when he was then my boyfriend, now my husband, when we bought this house together, we didn't have the capital to do it properly. So I went and I cashed in some, and I'm sure it's okay if I say which share it was, but it was Naspers, and it was like, 23 years ago. I cashed in my Naspers shares to buy this home. And if I work it back to what that would have been worth today, this is the most expensive house in South Africa. So that was my worst decision. And you would think investing in property and having a home and not having debt would be a great decision. However, it was the worst decision I ever made in hindsight, of course. My best decision literally is as simple as having been an investor since the day I walked into Momentum when I was 22 years old. And the value today of having saved 12% of my income that I've had for every single day of the last 33 years, or every month at least of the last 33 years, and that constant saving and the benefit of time. I have time on my hands, and when I look back at the time when I retire, about a third of that would be my contribution. 2/3 would actually be the benefit of having been in the market for so long. So time and investments is the one thing that just goes hand in hand.
And you've got to have a whole lot of patience for that as well. Jeanette, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for having joined us on Smart Money today. What a pleasure it's been catching up with you. Jeanette Marais is CEO of Momentum Metropolitan Group.